And it's time now to take a look at what's grabbing headlines in the press. Solange Moujon joins us. Hi, Solange.
Hi, Monty.
So we're starting off with the big story today, the visit to Ukraine from the leaders of Germany, France, and Italy.
Yeah, and for security reasons, the visit wasn't confirmed until just before Mario Draghi, Emmanuel Macron, and Olaf Scholz arrived in the Ukrainian capital. But very early this morning, before that, images were published of them on a night train from Poland. And as La Repubblica tells us, last night, the three men had an hour-and-a-half-long meeting in a Spartan, heavy-curtained train as the wagons, quote, moved in the night in fits and starts. They discussed their differences. The paper says, but also how to show a unified front when it comes to Ukraine. While train travel is slower but safer to get to Kyiv, Der Spiegel, it tells us of the visit itself will be a quick one. In and out in 8 hours max is how the site describes the visit. It says that Chancellor Scholz, along with Macron and Draghi, will present promises of an extensive number of weapons in their meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky. This would add to the over $1 billion of new American aid. And as Il Messaggero explains, the point of the visit is not only to show Europe's continued support, but also to, quote, rebalance the weight exerted by the U.S. in this crisis. But even with these big arms package promises and the issue of EU membership as well under discussion, the New York Times explains that tensions are high in Kyiv over slow weapon deliveries, Macron's insistence that diplomacy will be needed to end the war, and the increased grumblings in Brussels about the rising cost for the European Union in a potentially drawn-out conflict.
Okay, so sticking with the war in Ukraine, China has further expressed its support of Russia.
Yeah, as the China Daily explains, it tells us that Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin spoke for the second time since the conflict began, with Beijing reiterating its support of Russian sovereignty, but also Russian security. It was, as Politico notes, the most direct backing to date of Russia, with Xi Jinping saying there was, quote, good momentum in bilateral relations. Now, as the Financial Times describes it, this support between what it calls, quote, two old friend nations. And the paper says the talk was meant to show the world, and specifically Europe and the United States, that Russia is not isolated and that Beijing has its backing.
Okay, now to France, where the second round of the legislative elections are coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, two visions for the future of France are facing off on June 19th, namely in regard to taxes, pensions, and the budget, according to L'Humanité. For the Communist paper, the choice is between a more liberalist, capitalist France or more solidarity and public help towards inequality. Now, to succeed in breaking Emmanuel Macron's majority, the left coalition of the NUPES is counting on the youth vote, according to Libération. And also the left-leaning paper, it explains that leaders of the coalition are hoping that their renewed stances on feminism, ecology, and against inequality will push 18 to 34-year-olds and women as well to cast ballots. But on the other side of the political spectrum, the conservative paper Le Figaro, it says that the far left wants to make the National Assembly tremble. In its editorial, it says that Mélenchonisation, or Mélenchonization, is taking place, that the coalition is actually entirely far left, with a revolutionary motto of, quote, down with the established order. Now, outside of these very divergent views in the French press, The Guardian says that Mélenchon has evolved from, quote, a populist insurgent to a politician who has managed to unite the left for the first time in 20 years. How did he do it? By shifting, they say, from geopolitical issues to bread and butter policies.
Okay, Mélenchonization.
Mélenchonization.
That is not easy to say. Okay, now for some LGBTQ plus news, and these stories are diametrically opposed.
Yeah, this section is a bit one step forward, one step back. First, the Australian site ABC tells us that Thailand is getting closer to legalizing the rights of same-sex partners. This comes after thousands participated in Thailand's very first gay pride march. Multiple bills are making their way up the legislative ladder, which means that Thailand could become the second nation in Asia to approve same-sex marriages. Now for the repression. The Independent tells us that Saudi Arabia has begun seizing rainbow-colored toys and clothes as part of its crackdown against homosexuality out of fear of, quote, sending a poisonous message to children.
Okay, so let's shift gears here. Finally, Solange, the press is discussing a tech dining debate.
Yes. Are you for or against QR code menus when you go out to eat? That is the debate that the Washington Post is having today. While this may, in my opinion, be going too far, one columnist writes that they are the death of civilization. Not only do they, quote, fully degrade the experience of dining out, but they are unnecessary, antisocial, discriminatory, and unpopular. I think referring there to the use of telephones as well. But another columnist argues that the paper menus actually don't serve a purpose. They have to be replaced, they're dirty, and they force restaurants to stick to the printed page. While digital ones not only glow in dimly lit restaurants, you can zoom in, and they invite us, the Washington Post says, to adapt and change our ways.
Well, who knew there would be such a fierce debate over QR codes?
Exactly.
Okay. Solange, thanks a lot.